Hey everyone, welcome to the Sorcerer's Codex. If you're a DM that wants easier prep times and to be able to ad-lib and do things on the fly a little bit easier, we are going to be setting up a DM Toolbox today. I'm going to show you 5 things to be able to put into it to help you during all stages of DMing. And this is not campaign specific, it's not session specific. These are things that are going to be able to be reused and come in handy and give you the resources needed to just pull things in on the fly. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get right into it. All right, so you're wanting to set up a DM Toolbox. I think it's first important to understand exactly what it is so we're on the same page. A DM Toolbox is a set of resources available to you to help you run any D&D game. It is campaign and session irrelevant or non-specific. So if you're trying to run Storm King Thunder, or if you're trying to run something out of Tales of the Hunting Portal, all of these resources can potentially be used in either one. They don't care. It is list of names, maps, and other things, a collection of things that you can use to help do prep time easier and faster, and it just helps in every single way. The goal is to cut down your prep time. That's what you want to do. You don't want to spend 8 hours, 16 hours, or whatever prepping. That's if you're spending that much time for a 4-hour session, you are upside down. You don't want us to be spending more time prepping a session than you get out of it. That's just a general rule I have. And since employing it, it has helped me a lot in keeping up with the campaign. You hear a lot about DM burnout, and this is one of the things that's going to help you with that, is just having that mentality of, I'm only going to spend so much time prepping for a 4-hour session. And keeping up with 16 hours a week of prep for a 4-hour session, eventually, I believe you're going to run out of steam. And eventually your campaign is just it could come to an end, or the frustrations of spending 16 hours makes you so invested in all the content that you put together for the PCs that you want them to explore it all. And the PCs may just not want to do that. But because you're so invested, because you spent so much time putting into the different intricacies of what's going on, if they just decide, I don't want to do that, and go left instead of right, that 16-hour prep all of a sudden was worthless, and you don't want that. So that's part of the reason for all this. Let's get right into the individual things we're going to start putting in our toolbox and see how they help us with prep, and especially not just prep, but being able to do things on the fly. Okay, so the first thing going into your DM Toolbox are maps, battle mats, or maps. It kind of depends on whether or not you're an online or offline player. You're going to have to translate this into your needs. But having a set of maps that are generic and can be deployed anywhere is basically what I'm talking about. Having 5 forest maps, 5 grasslands maps, swamps, having desert, all of these things, just starting off with a 5 decent maps that can be deployed generically, that doesn't have any kind of specific detail that players are going to recognize, and also perhaps being sparse enough that you can add assets on like trees and rocks and things like that to make them more unique. You can take them and rotate them in different orientations to kind of fool the senses a little bit. Having a collection of maps is going to help you start throwing visual aids out for your players. And starting off with just 5 of each biome really helps you have the minimum set that you need to rotate them and make sure that the players aren't seeing the same one over and over again. It's actually not that bad, especially if you're like an in-house or an in-person player. Just having your desert map and having your forest map, you know, being able to deploy those, it's just going to help. And I don't think that the players are going to be worried as much if they're different when they're in person versus online, where the images are just more readily available to be used. And I know that some of you in-person players use the online images to print out and use them. So I feel like it's safe to say that either online or offline can gather the maps easily. What this is going to do is allow you, if the players are doing something in the woods, and you have that battle map ready, you have a forest battle map, it can encourage you to come up with potential conflicts that they might run into on the fly. And you are confident that, hey, I can put this map together pretty quickly. It's not going to cost me but a minute or two in the end. So why not introduce this conflict? Whereas otherwise, you might just try to veer them back to the content you have prepped without allowing them to have freedom. So I think it's an important thing to have in your toolbox. Just, it's the foundation of any conflict in your story. Number 2, regional character names. We're going to just go over this quickly. A lot of times DMs have just a master list of names to pull names from should they need it. What I encourage you to do instead is divide those names up into different regions of areas close to the players, or just within your world, whatever level you're currently at setting up your campaign. What happens is you can pull the name. So if a traveler from the north has come down to where the PCs are, and their name sounds somewhat different than the area that they're in, maybe a player can infer that this person is not local. And if a player asks, hey, where are you from? You sound different. Your name sounds different. Your accent sounds different. All these things. Well, perhaps the players will infer that this person's not from around here. What's cool is if the players then go to where that character was from, and all the characters there start sounding like they're from where that person was from. All their names are close to the same as that person. Their voices, try and do your accent as best as you can if you're at that point. But the important thing is it creates a cohesive world when you are pulling certain style names for these specific people and these other style names from these specific people. It can help you diversify your world and again create that cohesion. These people belong together. These people belong together, and encourage that level of immersion for your world. All right, so let's talk about drag and drop events. These are things that can be sprinkled anywhere into the world, anywhere into the region, and they're just things for the characters to discover maybe while they're traveling. That is really the purpose. Again, it's not session specific. So if within your campaign world you have these soldiers and there's this conflict, and that's a main conflict within the campaign, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you can drop in to any campaign or any session and it be a little bit more generic in a sense. It's important to, at least for me, and I encourage you to do the same, that these events draw the PCs off the road. So it's not something, it can be something that they encounter on the road, such as a broken wagon or something like that. But I encourage that most of them be something to pull them into an adventure, and an adventure that can be completed within the time allotment of a session. Sort of like a mini one-shot. And I said mini one-shot on purpose. And just so we're clear, I define a one-shot as an adventure that can be completed in one game session. It is, I keep seeing advertisements for one shots, and it's like they go on for 4 or 5 sessions, and that's not what I came to understand a one shot to be. So it should be able. So if you have a 4-hour session, maybe it gets completed in an hour or 2, or less, even 30 minutes. Just something to pull them off the road. An example: as you're traveling down the road, you see the top of a monolith in the distance. It is made of this material. It has a steep curved top, and at the very top, it looks like there's a crack, and you see a glow in the distance. Even it's a glow bright enough that you can even see it in the daylight. That is what you see. Now, the players can determine to go investigate this or just keep going. It's fine. But this is an example of an event. And then you can determine what's at this monolith, what's its purpose. Is there just some clues to something that maybe they can research later? It doesn't always have to be combat. It can just be, man, there's this really weird thing out there. What is that? When they get into town, it gives them a conversation topic to discuss with the villagers and things like that. Like, what is that out there? And some of the villagers may have some stories to go along with that. Who knows? But it just creates something interesting. More importantly, the reason why you would want these events is to help with the pacing of the story. If the story's pacing a little bit too quickly and they're just kind of getting through things too fast, it can create some problems. Or if you're trying to buy just a little bit of time, if you're trying to set up like a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I do this often, where you want the end of the session, the session's starting to wrap up, and a good ending point is them arriving at the village. But they're about to get to the village, and you still have like 30, 45 minutes of session left, and you don't want to just get them to the village and say, all right, we're calling it quits early. Throw a little event at them, and they can, perhaps it will distract them enough that it can kind of buy you a little bit of time so that the session can end at that dramatically appropriate moment. Number 4, a list of random shops. What we're trying to do here is create a list of shops for different professions, such as a blacksmith, tailor, enchanter, things of that nature. A jeweler would be another good one. So you want a list of maybe 5 to 10 shops. It kind of varies depending on how often you use the list. But what you want to do is include as much information about the shop as you feel that you need. So if you're a person that all you need is the name of the shop owner, and you can come up with the look of the shop and the what the shop is selling and all that stuff, the descriptions of the owner, if you can come up with all that stuff on the spot, great. All you need is maybe the name of the shop and perhaps the name of the owner, and that can give you a jumping off point. But if you're not good at coming up with all this stuff, go ahead and write down the description of the building. Go ahead and write down the description of the owner and a list of things that they may sell. And that gives you a really good shop that you can just throw into the world whenever you need it. Having them in different categories means if you use a blacksmith on the list, well, that blacksmith now exists in this place. You can mark it off the list and make a new blacksmith to replace it. And that way you constantly have a list of blacksmiths and tailors as needed without having to go ahead and create all these things for every town that you have already made. If the players are traveling along the road and they're heading towards a town, for instance, maybe one of the players asks a traveler, hey, is there a blacksmith in town? And if that traveler knows of the blacksmith in town, you can go ahead and use that blacksmith on your list to say, yeah, this place exists. The owner is this, look for this kind of sign. And then mark it off your list and put it into the database for your town that now that blacksmith exists there. Number 5, we are going to need a bunch of tokens if you're an offline player, or a bunch of minis if you're an in-person player. Having the minis ready just helps you. Again, if a player decides to conjure a fire elemental, you can bring out the fire elemental token. You can bring out the fire elemental mini. As long as this is going to be an ongoing process, just creating and finding the art and creating the tokens for your virtual tabletop, or for in-person play, of all these different creatures that exist within the monster manual, and even creatures that you want to just create on your own. Just have some sort of visual representation for these creatures so that you can put them on the field and show where they exist. Some token or some minis come pre-painted if you want to do that. If you want to paint your own minis, hey, that's a really great hobby to get into. This is going to be, I believe, one of the more time-consuming things of finding the appropriate art, creating a token template in Photoshop, and just applying all the images to that token template so that you can create the tokens easy and have them ready to deploy on the field in just a moment. This is what I was talking about before about having your battle maps ready. So if the players encounter something out in the wilderness that you just kind of thought up on the spot, if you already have the tokens ready and you already have the battle map ready, all you got to do is pull out the battle map, put the tokens on there, and you're ready to go. And it makes it almost appear, at least to the players, that all this existed already, and then you were ready for them to wander off the beaten path. All right, so I hope this information is useful to you. Take as much of it as you want, use as much of it as you want. Some of this can actually be found within the books. You can find lists of names within the books that are name generators. I'll give a link to donjons that I use often for all sorts of generators for things. Tavern names and character names, and they actually have pull down lists that sort of regionalize the names as well, so that kind of helps, and I use that as a backup. So using that can drastically reduce your prep time. If you come up with an encounter that exists within a forest, you already have the battle map, you already have the tokens done. If you come up with a character and you just need a name really quickly, figure out where they're from in your world, pull a name from the list if you need it. These kinds of things can really help you in the final hours of prep. Just kind of pull something together very quickly. Again, I feel that prep needs to be considered as a resource. How much time are you truly committing outside of the session to prepping, and come up with a realistic number. For me, my sort of rough estimate is I want to spend 30 minutes for every hour of a session. So if there's 4 hours of a session, I want to spend, on average, I'm not talking about every session, but on average, I want to spend about 2 hours prepping for every session. Now, there are some sessions that I take 4 to 6 hours to prep for, and that's when I'm trying to do something really special. There are other sessions that don't need hardly any prep, and in fact, I can get by several weeks without doing any prep at all. But I am also an improv DM, so I can come up with a lot of things on the spot, and I don't need that level of prep. Again, as I was saying with the list of random shops, make lists and include as much detail as you feel that you need. But you may be a little newer and not quite you may not feel comfortable. You may have the ability, but you just may not feel comfortable coming up with all these things on the spot. That's fine. You'll get there. But hopefully this DM Toolbox idea, you can at least start with these basics, these 5 basic tools that you can utilize, and then start adding new tools for yourself, such as what I've done. I have a few more things that I do that sort of help me. But hey, if you enjoyed this content, leave that that thumbs up. Don't forget to do that. And if you didn't, put that thumbs down button down. Let me know that you didn't enjoy this content. And feel free to ask any sort of question in the comments, any sort of clarifying statements or anything like that that you may need from this. But I'll be leaving now, and we will see you next time.